Chairperson of the Competition Commission, Shri Arun Jaitley, the Secretary of the Department of Corporate Affairs, members of the Competition Commission who are present here, and I see several other distinguished persons, Mr. Chavla, Mr. Mittal, Mr. Sakubuwa, been both directly or in the past associated with this institution, and who've had a considerable role in these areas, and all of the members of the bar and colleagues present here today. I think it's a very pleasant occasion today that the Competition Commission has acquired an extremely modern and an elegant, a far more presentable premises which can compete with its counterparts in the other parts of the world, at least in its looks. And that goes into operation very soon. While I was going around this floor and seeing the kind of amenities which have been provided, along with the kind of jurisprudential evolution, the kind of cases and the judgments involved, I was actually looking back several decades on both the nature of the establishment and the content of the establishment of how we work. On the nature of the establishment, I remember the MRTP operating out of a travel court house. It was more like a shaded complex rather than a regular building. And I remember the company law board operating out of a room which was 1/4 the size of this room in Shastri Bhavan, which found it even difficult to accommodate members of the bar at long, prolonged hearings. And then, of course, when the Competition Commission came up during the transition, you had some time to move to a new premises, but I'm glad that as the development of these areas is taking place, the NBCC, which has done a commendable job in the development of these areas, has been able to provide you an extremely large office, which probably has the potential of increasing the efficiency and the environment of the work. Like most changes, we always fear the unknown. And therefore, there has been a tradition in Indian society to resist whenever changes are being made. And many of these changes are for the better. For instance, this complex, when it comes up and it becomes fully operational, and I'm referring to the Kidwai complex, like the new Moti Bagh, this will be greener than the rest of the city. This will be more presentable than the rest of the city. But during the development, till people have seen the actual results, there is always a fear of the unknown. And that fear of the unknown creates hurdles. I've had an opportunity to be associated with the very birth of the Competition Commission. Needless to say, the policies we followed in the 60s and 70s I think with the wisdom of hindsight, most of us feel that some of the policies were actually responsible for the slowdown, or what we used to refer those days, or the globe, the world used to mock at us by referring to India and our growth as the Hindu rate of growth. The essence of the MRTP was that economies of scale are bad. Size is evil. And correspondingly, the efficiencies of size and economies of the scale will lead to the crushing of many others. And that has to be prevented. Now, this was a result of obsolete thinking. The world had changed. In fact, the world had started changing in the 60s itself. China started changing in the 70s. But by a series of amendments, we were still bringing those changes which actually held back our growth potential. And post 1991, the new realization started coming when from an economy of shortages, we started transforming into a fast-moving economy, an economy of surpluses in several areas. And that is when this thought came that do we unshackle ourselves, allow the markets to operate freely, allow the inherent potential of the society to take force, and just have a regulatory mechanism in case we find aberrations in the market process or in the market mechanisms. The regulators can step in and set the rules of the game. That was the whole object. And the evolution of those regulators itself was a challenging situation. The TRAI was the first amongst the regulators. And every time TRAI, and this was a sector which had just opened up in the mid-90s. And every time TRAI set the rules of the game, somebody would move the High Court. And the courts always hate to be told that they should not intervene or not exercise jurisdiction. And the courts will say that all right, we'll admit it and stay. And then the disposal will wait till the cows came home. As a result of which the whole reform of the regulatory process was being set at naught. Rules framed, regulations framed, market regulations laid down by TRAI, and these were all being held back. And I remember on a winter morning in 1999, the cabinet had an opportunity to discuss this, how do we move further, because telecom was a sector which was bound to grow. From 0.8% tele density, we had by then come to about 8% to 9%. And today you are close to 90%. And therefore the potential of the sector had to be unleashed. And if the regulator laid down, and every time under Article 226 the courts would say, well, we have no time, we'll hear it whenever we have the time. That is when a parallel exercise went on. Some of us, I chaired that subcommittee, we used to sit every morning, and in a week's time we produced the basic amendments to that regulatory law. And we thought, let us create an interim institution, and that is how the TDSAT was born. Some rules were also, the regulations were also rewritten. And therefore from the regulator you go to the appellate mechanism, and from the appellate mechanism you go to the Supreme Court. So that there is a faster disposal. That experiment worked. And then we had this parallel exercise of trying to draft the competition law. Now in Western societies it used to be more popularly referred to as the antitrust law. And while we were busy drafting it, by a curious coincidence, I looked after, along with the Law Ministry, the Department of Corporate Affairs at that time. We appointed an expert committee. Most of us in the system, the political system, the civil service, the bar, the judiciary, was still not aware of what this competition law is going to be all about. And then studying the experiment of several other societies, that when you transform into a free market economy from a regulated economy, who is going to correct the aberrations if the markets go rogue? And therefore you need a market regulator. And the market regulator was finally established. A selection was made. And there was a very eminent select panel, Mr. Naresh Chandra and some other eminent people who selected the first team. Even at that time, the judicial institution had not realized the need for the regulators. Somebody moved the court and said, here is this institution being set up which doesn't have a single retired judge in it. And the Chief Justice of India commented, well, this is a cross intervention in what should be a judicial function. I am therefore going to stay the setting up of the CCI. So this is from 2004 to 2009. That's how you were buried even before you were born. And finally, then we intertwined I was not in government, but the government at that time rightly reconsidered the matter and then intertwined the experience that we had from the TRAI, that the regulator must consist of the experts or those who evolve and develop an expertise. The appellate tribunal must have a judicial mind and an area expert or a sectoral expert. And therefore that appellate mechanism was then translated into this. And what was considered to be a better solution was found then. And therefore you started functioning. And it's an important function. And I can tell you, as I look down the tunnel, this function is going to expand further for the simple reason. Our per capita may be still modest, but the size of our economy is very large. This year in sheer size, we've overtaken France. Next year we are likely to overtake Britain, and therefore we'll be the 5th largest. And if other economies in the world are growing at a rate much lesser than ours, then I think over the next several years, and I don't see it as a very long period, for us to overtake those economies which are growing at 1–1.5%, and we grow at 7 to 8% on an average. So for us to overtake them, and if you look at 2030 or 2040, you are unquestionably going to be, as the world projections are, amongst the big 3 in size. And already you can see the ripples of a consumption economy building up. And if you see some of these figures, whether it is purchase of consumer items or using certain services, the exponential growth which is taking place in several sectors is going to lead to a large number of domestic and international players, both in manufacturing, in sales, in services, in various products. That size is going to hugely expand. And when that expands, you'll obviously see some of those who don't comply with the fair market regulation indulging in cartelization, having vertical or horizontal tie-ups, abusing dominance to impact on prices. or diluting competition. And therefore a regulatory mechanism to approve all the M&As would be required. And I think that part of the economic activity is going to expand. And over the next 10 to 20 years, we still have a lot of avenues for pushing up our growth. For instance, growth is more in the north, south and the western part of the country. So if you drew a straight line through India, the eastern side still has to grow faster. So that's an area which we will see growth. Women employment is an area where we will see their contribution coming into the growth process. And therefore this is going to be extremely large, and therefore the impact on markets is going to be very large. And hence you will have to bear this in mind, that over the next 10 to 20 years, in these areas, the economic activity expanding, your role is going to expand. And therefore both the bar and the experts who man these institutions will be required to be trained professionals, rather than those who are unable to fully diagnose this situation and address it. And I think our population is large, the consumer base is large, the size of the economy potentially is going to be extremely large, and therefore the market is going to be very large. And if the market is large, we'll certainly have aberrations in the market. And therefore, the need for you to step in is also going to be there. I am quite certain that with this new premises, your role is going to increase over the years, and this potential will be able to exploit and use to the best of your potential. My best wishes to the Competition Commission, all its members, and the members of the bar who are going to be those who utilize this amenity, which is going to be of great help to them. And certainly let me once again thank all your members, the former chairman, the NBCC, for having made this occasion possible.